meeting to order. It is 7:01, April 27th. We are going to start with a moment of reflection before we get into the approval of the agendas. So we'll start with taking a moment. All right, thank you. We'll carry on with the agenda, approval of the agendas. We have a consent agenda for council's consideration.
I'll make the motion, Your Worship.
Councilor Dressler makes a motion to approve as presented.
I would just like to take out the walking trails.
Okay. Request to pull from the
Just so we can have a short discussion on the walking trails, please.
So we can pull that item and we'll add it to new business item 8. I believe that would be item B4 under the consent agenda. Okay, Councilor Dressler, would you be willing to modify your motion as such?
Yes, I would, Your Worship. I'll modify for the walking trail to be taken out of the consent agenda, but onto the regular agenda under new.
Very well. So this council's motion to approve with the exception of one item. Called to question, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Moving on then to the regular meeting agenda, and as we've already added item 8, I have not heard of any other additions from administration, so unless council has any questions on the agenda, a motion to approve. Councilor Wilson makes the motion. Call to question, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. So we have a moment now for the good of council, and just before we begin, I want to encourage all council members to use their mics when they are speaking. And if you're not speaking, to kindly turn them off so we don't get too much feedback. And I believe that would be it, correct, Brad? So for the good of council, does anyone have something they wish to share on the good of council? Councilor Wilson on?
We need the time cards done by tomorrow afternoon, please.
Very good. Any other comments? Questions? Anything else? Councilor Dressler?
Well, it's harvest season already, or not harvest season, seeding season, so I see our local farmers are already starting out cultivating their fields. So I'm hoping that the weather stays very good for them. I also would like to pay exception to Fort McMurray, who is dealing with their own disaster right now up there with ice flows and flooding. So, my thoughts are with them.
Thank you, Councilor Dressler. Anyone else? Councilor Edwards?
I just was really impressed to see that the Empress Theater has started to do Popcorn Friday of their own. And so you can order through them and pick up on Friday evenings between 6 and 8. You can pick up popcorn, the best popcorn in Southern Alberta. You can pick it up from the Empress. So I'm really excited to give that a shot this week because I've been missing the popcorn. Not so much the movies, but the popcorn. So kudos to them for trying to kind of keep the spirit alive and keep things going in town. So if you have a chance, order some popcorn.
Very good. And just a quick comment regarding COVID. I know it's been a hard time for all of us, and I have no clue what this thing is going to look like, and I'm sure none of us really do, but it's going to take patience. And I've been reaching out a little bit to our MLA to ask the province what their plans are, because I know neighboring provinces are starting to come up with back to work plans. And I think it's critical that we start getting a good idea of what these will look like. I know there's been a task force that's been commissioned, the chamber's been part of that. I believe our CEO might be part of that, but overall, the whole intent is to try to prepare as much as possible so when we are free to go back to work and business as usual, as much as that can be, that we have some tools in place to be able to do that effectively. So do want to give a shout out to the chamber for the work they're doing and just advertising and letting people know who's open when. It's not an easy time for anyone. Feel for employers, for parents, for teachers, for all those that are. It's a hard impact, and so everyone will deal with it differently. And we're hoping that together we can get through this stronger than we went into it. So, a few comments I'd make on that. And if no one else has anything, Councillor Dressler.
I think I really want to pay notice to our businesses that are in Fort Macleod that are continuing operations with a skeleton staff or that and helping out all of our dealerships, our agricultural businesses that are here providing the supplies for our farmers that are actually starting their season. So big shout out to all the businesses, including your business, which is still operational in Beauvais. It's trying times, and I think everybody's doing their best to keep things going.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We will then carry on to public hearings, of which we have 2 tonight. I know this is the first time I've done this in a COVID setting where distancing is a rule, so I will trust our staff to help us on this with anyone wishing to speak for or against the bylaw that we are presenting. We have 2 tonight, bylaw 1910, 1907. So the plan will be to ask council for a motion to open the public hearing. Gavin Scott is on with us on camera. He will introduce the bylaw, after which we will open it to the public. And if you could state your name clearly and whether you're wishing to speak for or against the bylaw, then we'll give you that opportunity. Once everyone has an opportunity to be able to share, we will close the hearing for that bylaw before we proceed on to the next public hearing for the next bylaw, bylaw 1907. So tonight, we will start with bylaw 1910. I will ask for a motion from council to open the public hearing, and then we'll hand it over to Gavin Scott, who is our planner with ORSC. So, Councillor Van Hagenbos makes a motion to open the public hearing on bylaw 1910. Call to question, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. I will now pass it over to Gavin Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. This evening we have bylaw 1910 for you. It's been a while since we've had a bylaw that could have some controversy or have some things that may not fit in the neighborhood. When we look back in the history, this welding shop came into being sometime in the 1970s. The current zoning being residential says that there has been change to that current land use, and that the current thinking for the property was, during the last bylaw update, was that it be residential. The block itself, the entire block is residential. There is industrial to the south and to the west. And being on a corner, this puts planning kind of in a position where, well, maybe, but we're in a position tonight to listen to what the residents have to say, if anything, regarding this change in zone. So I'll leave that at that.
All right, thank you, Gavin. So being this is a public hearing for bylaw 1910, which is a bylaw to redesignate lands legally from residential to industrial general. The locations lots 25 and 27 of block 364. which is located on 50th Street in Fort Macleod on 2nd Avenue. So I would kindly ask if anyone wants to speak for or against this bylaw, that they would stand, take the mic, state your name, and whether you wish to speak for or against this bylaw. Yes, please. Thank you.
I'm Angela Barassa, speaking for my father, Rob Luther. So just a little history about the welding shop. And lot 27. This building was built by Ted Swihart as a welding shop in 1953 on the site of the former Empire Hotel. At this time, I believe this whole area was either industrial due to the fact all the grain elevators, feed mill, and fuel bulk station were located in the same area. Also at the time, there was no houses east of the shop. I believe what Ted told me, the town rezoned the block in the late 60s or early 70s to accommodate contractors wanting to build duplexes that are there today. So I, being Rod, purchased the property from Ted in the summer of 91. That's lot 27 and where the shop sits. I purchased lots 25 and 26 in the summer of 93, which had belonged to the federal government, PFRA, in hopes of expansion of the shop and business. I applied in April of 92 to rezone lots 25, 26, and 27 before purchasing them. I was turned down, even though I had improved the property. When I bought it, it was deplorable and run down, and the government lots, which I went ahead and purchased, were overgrown with weeds and pollution from the feed mill, and he does have pictures if you want to see them. I then wrote a letter to the town administration requesting to change my request for just lot 27 so I could expand the shop on the west side. All these years I had thought lot 27 was rezoned because in the spring of 1996, I applied for and received a building permit to add on an addition on the west side, 22.5 by 45 feet. The setback was also waived on the north and west, so the addition would line up with the existing shop. Therefore, when we recently hired an appraisal firm, we were told that they were all residential. Yet I have 3 tax notices from 1996, and lot 27, which says industrial, and lots 25 and 26 say residential. I feel that without rezoning all 3 lots combined to 1, I will not be able to sell this as a viable business property. It is still a very good and useful building that I have completely redone and kept up to date. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Does council have any questions? It's obvious you'll be speaking for the bylaw, 1910. Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
sorry.
Okay, very good. I don't believe we have any questions at this point.
Just one question, just to confirm. So, you were under the impression that lot 27 was industrial at one point, and you said that you had a tax notice indicating that?
Yes.
Just wanted to confirm that.
Yes. The 2 were residential and lot 27, correct, was industrial. We have them right here.
Thank you.
Is the building currently only on 27 still?
Yes. The main building.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the yard east are the other 2 lots.
Okay. Well, I Do you know if the council has any other questions? Is there any comments from you, Gavin? Or you're muted, Gavin.
I'll say that we did look through the archives and the mapping of every bylaw showed this as residential from the 1980s onward. Staff did attempt to look to see if there was any amendments, and again, that would indicate that yes, it was being zoned back and forth from industrial to residential. I can also say that when a bylaw, like your current land use bylaw, is passed, a municipality may rezone people's property across the entire municipality without direct notice, so that changes can happen and can happen on a broad sweeping scale without notice to individuals.
Thank you, Gavin. Okay, well, if there's no further questions, I think is that all for your presentation? Is there any other closing remarks that you have? Councilor Joseph?
Just a question that I had for Gavin, if you could clarify where I'm in. If this is all zoned into industrial and a new purchase owner decides that he wants to put it back to residential, are we just rescinding the bylaw, or do we have to change this and have back to public hearing?
We would have to go back through 3 readings in the public hearing.
I'll say based on the picture, the building has come a long ways from where it was, eh? Looks good.
It's come a long way.
Okay, so I think that's all for questions we have for you tonight. Is there anyone else in the gallery wishing to speak for or against this bylaw? I'll ask one more time. Is there anyone else wishing to speak for or against bylaw 1910? Seeing none, then I'll request a motion from council to close the public hearing for bylaw 1910. Councillor Woolston, who makes the motion? Called the question, all there. Any opposed? Motion carried. So the council will consider the 3 readings of the bylaw in our next portion of our agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the next order of business is bylaw 1907. We'll go through the same practice. We will have a motion from council to open public hearing for bylaw 1907. And then we will have Gavin Scott introduce the bylaw and give us any relevant information for that bylaw, and then we will ask anyone wishing to speak for or against. So a motion from council to open public hearing. Councilor Dressler makes the motion. Call the question, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. So Gavin Scott, if you may, introduce bylaw 1907 for us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bylaw 1907 is presented before you for a change from public institutional to residential multi-unit. This is a portion of an existing lot that was just recently changed to public institutional for a group home. The applicant came forward recently asking staff whether or not they could build residential accommodation. It was recommended that if they were to do so, that they would need to rezone to the appropriate district, and subsequent to that, subdivide the property. Now, when we look at the multi-unit residential district, you have to be cognizant of the fact that anything could be built within that district up into including greater than 4 dwelling units on the property. And I believe that the applicant is thinking of 8 dwelling units on the property. The existing site was originally utilized for school parking lot. The group home has accommodated the parking in the rear of their building and no longer needs this for parking, as well as provided handicap parking in a new location. Therefore, as far as the group home is concerned, this will not affect it. But that's not to say that this multi-residential will not have impacts to the neighborhood. I'll take questions as you see fit.
Okay, thank you, Gavin. And we can ask some additional questions later on in the agenda as well, correct? Okay, so since this is a public hearing for bylaw 1907, I'll request that anyone wishing to speak for or against this bylaw, that they would come to the mic, state your name, and whether you are for or against this bylaw.
Good evening, my name's David Webster. I'm representing the owner of the property as it is. Sorry. We are not looking at 8 units. In fact, your rules and regulations state that we could, at maximum, we could put 7 on, and with parking and everything else, it's next to impossible to put 7 on it. In fact, it would be impossible to put 7 on. We're looking at 4. Okay, I stand corrected. The plans have changed as well. Yeah. Excuse me.
Hi there. My name is Lonnie White. I own Cedar Ridge Homes in Lethbridge, and we're probably, I think, one of the biggest multifamily developers south of Calgary. So we've done quite a few projects in and around Lethbridge. I don't know if you're familiar going up Poop Drive towards the new high school there. All that multifamily, we've developed all of it. So kind of interesting. But I was approached probably about a month and a half ago by Cassie to look at doing a possible project out here. And we kind of sat down together and talked about what the needs were in the community, what was possible on the site, and took our experience and went forward with that and tried to put together a plan. So actually what we've done is we have some conceptual drawings that we can submit to you guys today based on 8 dwelling units. My understanding of talking with Cassidy is there's quite a need for this type of housing right now in Fort Macleod. And especially in these times, I think it's pretty good to have someone that wants to come and invest and build something new, create tax revenue. All those things are pretty important. So basically that's all I had to say. I was just here to represent Cassidy and just answer any questions on building or construction or our thoughts, concepts, and I guess just submit some drawings to you guys, give you a little bit of a visual and show you what kind of vision is for that. Yeah, if you could, sure. Thank you.
Gavin, is there anything you want to question on this based on your initial comments?
Yeah, I could add for council's information that irregardless of what you see on diagrams, that still has to go through the Regional Planning Commission for approval, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it can or will be approved.
That's correct. So the primary focus tonight, to remember, is the rezoning of land. And you made comments, Gavin, that public institutional could go up to how many units?
No, this is residential multi-unit proposal. And it has a discretionary use B that says dwelling units more than 4 dwelling units. And then I believe there's a height restriction which would tell you how many units you get, as well as the width restriction for setbacks.
Right. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against this bylaw? Councillor Ward, you have a
I
question?
do have a question as to whether or not this proposed rezoning will in fact meet what you were hoping to meet with respect to the building that you're looking to put on there. You've introduced an 8 unit, but at the outset and in the recommendation it speaks to having property for the multi-unit housing for staff. So I'm just wondering if there's been conversation with administration to ensure that this particular zoning is consistent with what you hope to achieve down the road. And I don't know who to direct that to, whether admin or to you, or speaking for us.
So, I guess I can if I may, I think as Gavin was mentioning earlier, it's a discretionary use, so it would still have to go to a planning commission to get approval on it, but as the project as we drafted it there, it does, I mean, we've gone through the land use bylaw, and other than discretionary areas in there, it does meet everything else that is a requirement. Different things like parking, heights, amenity spaces within it, that all has different applies. So this is just conceptual.
Ms. Keenan?
Thank you, Mayor Fader. Just for council's information, administration has not seen the conceptual plans, nor have we been engaged in any communication so far.
Councillor Edwards?
Just to clarify, I think what Councillor Orr was getting at is that the original request was to build staff housing, not to make the housing available to additional community members. And so I think that's the real question is this a staff housing building to be able to house the employees of the business, or is it going to be open potentially for members of the community as well?
Hello, my name is Akasi. I just wanted to introduce myself to those of you on council who don't know me. So it's not necessarily a staff housing dormitory, because when I did open here early this year, I had staffs that were traveling from Lethbridge, some moved from other cities to here. And it's been a real struggle to look for rental here in the neighborhood for them to be here. So when we thought about it, we haven't that space. We just wanted to put it out to see if we would be able to have a multi-dwelling over there, so that not necessarily being accommodating staff, but the rental open to all, so that staff could also rent and work at the place.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any further questions? Councillor Rossignol?
I realize that when it goes to MPC, the neighbors would be notified. Were they notified for this meeting? The neighbors were, they sent letters and stuff? Thank you.
Ms. Keenan?
Thank you, Mayor Fader. And looking quickly at the conceptual drawings, it's a magnificent building, so kudos for the craftsmanship. My concern on first look is parking. It looks like you've identified 4 off-street parking spots, 1 for each unit. Is that what your intent was?
Yes, actually there was 16, so 2 for each unit. There was 4 in the front and 12 in the back of the site plan. So I believe there's also a green space to the south as well, so I guess there would be, I don't think there would be any conflict with additional parking on street across things.
Councillor Lambos?
A lot of questions we're hearing right now are starting. I think a lot of the questions that we're hearing or being asked are in regards to the actual development, whereas the rezoning, regardless of the rental or the staff housing portion, this application is needed to do this, correct, Gavin? It needs to be rezoned for either of these.
Consider, we have to consider that the district is right in the neighborhood, and be accepting of all that is within that district as far as land use, the land uses that are listed.
Correct, but back to the actual detail of these drawings, it's great that we see that, but that technically has nothing to do with the rezoning. That's their plan, but we just have to look at the fact that the rezoning fits the area. Correct?
You can only take it as a visual, not that it is anything that can be approved.
That's right, the plans could change tomorrow.
No, that's clear. This is strictly for the rezoning. Any further questions regarding the rezoning? Anyone else wishing to speak for or against this bylaw? Any closing comments? Seeing none, then we will, Councilor Justin.
So we rezone this in May, this is going to be brought to MPC. I'm just want to confirm.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, if there are no further comments from the public or from council, then we will request a motion from council to close the public hearing for bylaw 1907. Councillor Monteith makes the motion. Call the question, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. So we'll carry on to the next portion of our meeting, which is consideration of the public hearings that we just had. We will start first with bylaw 1910. I will ask for a motion from council to go to second reading, after which we can have some debate and discussion. So a request for Councillor Edwards makes a motion for second reading of bylaw 1910. All right, so the motion for bylaw 1910, second reading is on the floor. Is there any discussion or questions from council to administration or debates? Councillor Owen?
I would like to speak in favor of the bylaw. I think to be consistent with past council and town administration representations to whatever degree those might have been, it seems to be that there were at least some. And also to respect the business investment that's been made over many years. I would vote in favor of the bylaw.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak to this motion? Seeing none, I will call it question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. I request a motion from council go to the third reading of bylaw 1910. Councillor Wilson Ho makes the motion. Any further discussion? Any further comments from you, Gavin? Just have to ask. All right, so we'll call this to question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you for everyone's consideration. We will now move on to consideration of the public hearing we just had on bylaw 1907. This is the same for this bylaw. We will need the motion for second reading and then go into third reading if so, council so desires. So call for a motion to go to second reading. Councillor Edwards makes the motion. This motion is on the floor. Does council have any questions for administration or debate? Councillor Edwards.
I'd just like to speak in favor of the rezoning. I do know that Fort McLeod does struggle with rental housing, and to have somebody willing to develop and build a multi-unit dwelling would be really helpful to our situation. I was on the housing committee for quite a while, and it's been a struggle to find appropriate accommodation for the people who come to work here, and we would love for them to stay here as well. So I do think that it's a good idea. I also think it's a good area because it is not as populated because of the park right across the street. So there's lots of room and space for families and everybody to spread out across the street. And so I don't feel like it would be a overburdening of that particular area because of the big park right across the road. So I think it's a great idea, and I hope it works well for you.
Very well, thank you. Councillor Venegas.
In regards to the development, it's not my only view here, but pavement or this development will have a higher assessment than pavement, so I'm all in favor of that. Oh, okay. Do I have to repeat myself? What I was saying was that this development has a higher assessment value than pavement.
I heard loud and clear there, Councillor Hagemas, thank you very much. All right, so any other comments from council? Councillor O'Brien?
Just a brief comment. We realize that this simply gives them the opportunity to take the next step with no guarantees. And the process will determine and give for other residents an opportunity to speak to it again. But in terms of supporting them and being able to take the next step, I agree with what's been said thus far.
All very good comments, thank you. If there is no other comments for or against, I will call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. And a request from council for motion for third reading of bylaw 1907. Councillor Van Hagemas makes a motion. Any comments, further comments on this bylaw? Seeing none, I will call third reading to bylaw 1907 to question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, everyone. All right. Are you done, Gavin? Adios. Okay, you're not allowed to leave. Thank you.
God, you get a fully spokesperson for you.
All right, thank you. Yeah. We will carry on then with unfinished business. Item 1, administration's requests from council to appoint alternate representative to the ICF committee, correct? Ms. Keenan.
Thank you, Mayor Fader. In discussion with my colleagues from around the region, each of them is appointing an alternate in the event one of the appointed members cannot attend. Given our conversations at the last council meeting, the recommendation tonight is that council appoints Councillor Gordon Wolstenholme as an alternate representative for the town of Fort McLeod on the Intermunicipal Collaborative Framework Committee dealing with recreation.
Anyone prepared to make a motion to that end? Councillor Dressler makes the motion. Any further discussion or debates? Call to question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. It's a big deal. Carrying on then to new business, item 1, administration, CEO Keenan.
Thank you, Mayor Fader. With respect to the communications from Barry Morishita, the president of AUMA, he has forwarded a letter to Minister Madu from the Minister of Municipal Affairs, outlining some of AUMA's recommended ideas and levers for economic stimulus funding, and they're included in the letter that all municipalities across the province of Alberta were CC'd on as of April 20th, so a few days ago.
So this is information.
Correct.
So motion to accept this information. Councillor Dressler. Any questions on this for administration? Seeing none, call the question in favor. Any opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to operations, has some policies to present. I will pass it over to Mr. Adrian Pedro.
Thank you, Mayor Fader. So as with previous council meeting, we're continuing to barrage you with operations policies. This week we do have operations policies 4, 5, and 7. That is sanding and snow removal policy, road maintenance policy, and the ultralight aircraft policy. Now we're asking that council reviews and receives as information the following policies as presented. So I know that we did have some questions prior to the meeting on the ultralight aircraft policy. So I'll do my best to answer those questions. One is how this policy came to be needed. So from what I can gather, the town did have a policy in the 80s for ultralight aircrafts. And then this one was drafted on the shelf for quite some time before I started. And so we're kind of bringing it to council for review. It's got a little bit of updates on it. I think it's prudent to have a policy like this, even though it basically just takes Transport Canada standards and implements them into a policy. It kind of holds the town accountable for maintaining that airport to standards as well. So I think it kind of goes both ways. In terms of the equipment, as defined in the policy, we've taken those definitions out of Transport Canada. Essentially, it's for any smaller aircraft, propeller planes, anything like that. So.
Councillor Dressler?
When you're going through, this was just a question after when this went on our Facebook thing. There was originally once a RC aerodrome team or something that was here that used to use the airport for their planes, because that was the only facility they had where they could actually fly their plane safely, so they weren't disturbing the neighborhood. Has that policy still stood in place, or has that gone the way of the dodo?
That's a good question. I'm not sure which policy that is. We would have to look that up.
Yeah, remote, I believe it was our old public works grader operator who originally started that program here.
It was one of our old public works grader operators that actually had started the program here. So there was quite a few that were building full-scale model aircrafts that were gas-powered. And of course, again, just for public safety, they were launching them off at the airstrip.
Councillor Navas?
Would that fall under the Transport Canada regulated though? Because that's what policy is all about, correct?
Yes.
Do these little planes fall under that policy?
So if I can speak to that further, so typically those type of aircrafts would. In the event that we did have a group that wanted to approach us, we would handle them similar to the way we handle any sort of car races. So they would approach us and then we would go through that process as well.
Can you clarify what the A line is?
Good question. It's some sort of geographical reference. I'm not entirely clear on it myself.
So these light aircraft need to stay north of A line on the south side of the ultra light taxiway. Such line extends east to Highway 2 and west to the trail.
Yeah, that's from what I've read on Transport Canada, that's sort of like their flight path they need to follow.
And this is strictly a policy, this is not a bylaw with fines attached to it.
Correct, yeah. So there is, it being a policy, there is some flexibility.
Alright, any other questions from council? So this policy is not for town staff, it's for anyone using the aerodrome, so somehow we need to communicate this policy.
This sort of formalizes the standards that are already in place. So we could communicate that, but it sort of already should be known based on their use of the aircraft, so.
I have no clue how that operates. I just know people use it with these aircrafts, and I don't want to see that substantially hindered. I think it's a recreation that they're part of that I find totally acceptable for that. So that's probably more my concern right now, that I don't want this to be looked at as, no, sorry, you can't do that anymore or something. But from what I understand, it's a policy that we need for Aviation Canada then, correct?
Yep.
Thank you, Mayor Fader. That's one aspect. I think the other aspect in terms of overall process is we do want to have a process in place where we have requests that they follow a similar process similar to what we already have in place. So it's a twofold policy. Airport Transport Canada, airport regulations, and also a process for when groups want to book it and use it.
Right, so visitors from outside our town need to be aware of this policy, perhaps. Councillor Orr?
This is a concern that I raised when we were introducing other policies as well. I simply look at the purpose of, and we're looking at this ultralight aircraft policy, where the purpose states that the town, by ensuring that the ultralight aircraft utilizing the town's airport meet all regulatory and safety requirements. That's a very high standard, in my opinion, that we're going to ensure that everyone utilizing this airport meet all the regulatory and safety requirements. And it seems to go on to say, under responsibilities, that the Public Works Foreman is responsible for the application and enforcement of this policy. And so then that leads me to questions. So where are the enforcement provisions? Under what's guiding that foreman? And secondly, how are we going to show that we have in fact met all of the regulatory and safety requirements to ensure that everyone that takes off from that site has met those? It seems to me just a little bit bringing too much responsibility on us in a situation where we may not have the capacity to meet the standard that seems to be set here. So that's just one of the concerns that I have.
Let's go to,
No, that's a reasonable concern. The Public Works foreman aspect, I think that's probably a poor wording choice. So we would be responsible for maintaining that airport, regardless of whether we had a policy in place or not. That maintenance would have to abide by whatever the standards are for airports across Canada. So that's what more so the responsible for application is. In terms of ultralight aircraft utilizing the airport, again, they're governed by their approvals with Transport Canada. So it's not necessarily something we would have to enforce necessarily.
It's just that absoluteness that concerns me, and I know that we do the best that we can to ensure that those things are, those safety and regulatory requirements are met. But it's not reflected in the wording of the policy, and I would just feel more comfortable if we are going to endeavor or something that, to the best of our capacity, or some out. I can foresee a situation where people are out flying and the two-seater, somebody's injured, and the family of that person looks to sue because, well, proper procedure wasn't followed, and all of a sudden we're defending ourselves.
Yeah, no, that's a fair comment. We can certainly look back on that wording and see what we can come up with.
Councillor Dresden?
I think the clarification is it's really an aerodrome operator. We don't police or govern aircrafts. That's Transport Canada's responsibility. We're basically to ensure that the runway is properly maintained, the landing lights turn on, the landing beacon turns on, and that it is our facility and it meets the codes. I think otherwise, the responsibility of the foreman more and less is to ensure that that runway is feasible, and because like again, we're the aerodrome operator. Aircrafts, we don't look after aircrafts, we don't look after ultralights. Everything else is all governed by federal standards through Transport Canada, so.
I would echo Councillor Orr's comments mostly. I just find the town being in a position where we are gonna ensure that the town's airport meets all regulatory and safety requirements. I think we need to differentiate between the operators and the actual airport itself. So I don't think we need to be responsible at all for the operators using the airport. It's the maintenance of the airport that we can be responsible for.
No, and that's fair. We'll look at that wording for sure.
So is it fair to say at this point, CEO Keenan, will we remove that policy from consideration at this point?
Yes, please.
I think policies still need to come back to council for, we don't call it approval. Do you want us to accept these policies as information?
All policies will come back to council for approval with the exception of HR policies, which are all done. So the ones before you tonight, for the most part, are for your approval.
Just one thing to add on to that. Can you do me a favor, Adrian? Can you follow up on the logbook that's actually for the pilots? If that is still the town's responsibility to ensure that logbook is kept up to date? Because I know at one point in time, it was Barney Bynum who used to actually send copies of the logbook to Transport Canada for pilots landing and taking off.
Thank you.
Will do.
So just for clarifications here, Keenan, I think in the past we only accepted policies as information. Do you need actual approvals on these?
I feel more comfortable, if there's approvals on anything that's not staff related, we've been bringing forward as information. But for operational policies as well as administrative policies dealing with finance, I would appreciate a resolution.
Thank you for that. So maybe if we can, are we good on the discussion for ultralights? Are we done on that one? Councillor.
I just have a quick question. So in regards to keeping this runway or airport up to Transport Canada regulations, do we have like an inspection procedure in a sense? Because, you know, there's a lot of trees there, and from one day to the next we could have branches all over that place. So I'm just curious, do we have something in place? Because if we're held liable for the runway,
So
then
typically we'll go out about once a week. And we do go out prior to any sort of events that are scheduled. So if there's a slalom or a race there, we go out before, we'll go out after just to inspect that condition. So it is monitored quite frequently.
Okay. So if we're good on that policy, we can discuss the other two council so needs. I know there is the sanding and snow removal policy, which, can you highlight any changes? Because I think we had a policy previous. I'm just wondering if you can highlight what the big changes are on this one.
So for the sanding and snow removal policy, there was one in place. There were some pretty large changes to this one in the procedure in terms of the snow route parking ban. That's going to be included in the traffic bylaw. So we included it in this policy as well. And then we did also change the roadway snow removal priority routes. So they're more or less the same, but we've added some more. Changed a couple around. So just to provide more clarity to everyone.
Councillor Dressler?
So the new signs will be being used once this policy is put in place? And will we get a visual aid to see what they look like for the community so they're aware of when these signs are put up for the winter operations?
Yeah, so the signs are all in, they arrived last week. So we're gonna start staking everything out and install. At that point, we'll put something out just regarding the snow route parking ban signs, because I know that's a new one for the town.
Question on snow control route. Sometimes it says snow route parking ban and sometimes it says snow control route. Is there a difference between the two?
Yeah, so the snow route parking ban is the overall parking ban across the town on snow control routes. And snow control routes is the actual location of each designated area.
So the snow control routes will have signage put up and then the snow route parking ban will apply to that area. So it's-
Correct, yeah.
Okay, any other questions on the other two policies? Seeing none, a motion then from council. I'm thinking we do resolution to accept the first two policies and then the third one would come back to council with some edits. Is my understanding? Unless council wants to approve all three. Councillor Monteith, you make that motion?
The first two policies, the road maintenance and so
Okay. Motion to approve the first two. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. Carrying on then to administration, we have 1, 2, 3, 5 policies. C.L. Keenan.
Just want to reiterate, this one is to receive as information as it deals with personnel.
Thank you. So we have 5 policies. Is anyone here to make a motion on this and we can have some discussion? Councillor Dressler makes a motion to accept all 5.
Correct.
Discussion? Councillor Holston.
Got excited there. I thought we weren't supposed to accept that. This was, we don't need a motion because it was for information. Isn't that what you said?
The motion is to accept as information.
No, you really don't need a motion for information according to parliamentary procedures, but.
No, but what we've been doing
That's okay, I just want to make sure.
Historically,
Right.
right, historically, we have been doing that because it aligns with the strategic plan. And since council operates by policy and by law, it's always good to have the resolution numbers there for historical purposes, as we know.
Very well, thank you. So, any comments on any of the policies? Councillor Dressler?
Just for administration, or actually, for Lisa, our protective services. So our old framework program that we had for the peace officers, that no longer will be being used. This will be a town-only framework.
Correct, at this point that is the case. Most of these policies have been amended to include a definition that includes an enforcement officer definition as well as a peace officer. So should we ever revisit anything, these policies will have to be revisited, but the enforcement officer definition is covered within these policies.
Would you like to comment on any of the policies? Highlight anything?
No, again, that was the biggest change other than the records management policy, it contradicted our bylaw, records management bylaw, so there's been a few changes to it to make sure that we're in line with our own bylaw. So.
Thank you. I believe we had a motion for all five, and that was Councilor Andrews. Oh, you did already, yes.
Accepting this, not accepting.
Patience, Tigger. So if there's no further comments from council, we'll call the motion to question, which is to accept all five as information to question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Carrying on to administration, 2020 operating budget, Director of Finance, Ms. Holak.
Good evening, Council. For your viewing pleasure, I've provided with the 2020 operational budget plan. We went over a draft version of this at the Committee of the Whole last week. Any changes requested by Council have been made in this document. The tax revenue within this document coincides with our 2020 mill rate bylaw, which will be coming to Council this evening for first reading. That's it.
So motion to approve the 2020 operating budget. Councilor Monteith makes a motion. Any discussion? Debate? Any more discussion? I had one comment, and we discussed it a little bit at our Committee of the Whole about, in light of the pool not operating this year, this plan is still to use the monies not used or saved in that portfolio as reserves for future operating. There's a bit of leveraging factor. Is that correct?
It's correct. I didn't put an overt note in the pool budget to that effect. However, when you get to the final page of the budget document, there is a transfer into reserves for approximately $120,000, which is the cost savings from having the pool closed in 2020 season.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, we will call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. We can operate.
Thank you.
Yay. All right, carrying on to item 5, bylaw 1914, which is our 2020 mill rate bylaw. This will request this for first reading, after which we will advertise and go to second and third. Director of Finance, Ms. Holbach, did you want to introduce this to us?
I will, Mayor Fader. So this is another document that we spoke about at the Committee of the Whole last week. It is our 2020 mill rate bylaw. The highlights are that we are increasing our residential mill rate, municipal mill rate, by 1.5%, which comes out to about 0.09 mils, which nobody's going to care about because it makes no sense except to people like me. So overall, that 1.5% increase to the residential municipal mill rate has an increase of about $24,000 to the overall tax revenue for 2020. In conjunction with residential mill rate increase, there is a municipal non-residential mill rate decrease of 0.5 percentage point, which corresponds into about a $6,617 decrease to the overall tax revenues of the town of Fort Macleod for 2020. Those two big changes combined result in about a $17,648 increase overall to the tax revenue in 2020. So as we all know, the municipal Tax revenue is one portion of our property tax notices. The other two portions are the Alberta School Foundation Fund requisition, which we have no control over. We charge it to our residents and our citizens, and then we pay it back to the government. The third portion of our combined assessment and property tax notices is our lodge requisition. We requisition for the Willow Creek Foundation, and they send us their requisition based on our equalized assessment, and we charge that through to our residents and citizens also. I could go, you know me, I could go on and on for hours. Just two more highlights. Our overall residential mill rate is still low compared to everyone else in the area. And our non-residential mill rate is competitive with others in our area, and council's decisions to increase the residential mill rate and decrease the non-residential mill rate this year makes the gap between those two mill rates a little bit less. And that's always the direction that we're looking for. And that's all I have to say. I'll take questions.
Perhaps a motion from council to go to first reading of bylaw 1914. Councillor Edwards makes the motion. Any questions for administration, discussion, debates? No. Go ahead. Councillor Orr.
Perhaps, Ms. Holbeck, you could simply explain the financial ramifications of the proposed postponement of the penalty date. You could just speak to that a little bit for those who might be watching.
Sorry, I forgot about that. I was so excited about the rest of it. So within the 2020 mill rate bylaw, we have postponed the deadline for paying your tax bill from the last business day in June at 4:30 p.m. to the last business day in August at 4:30 p.m., which is a 2-month postponement of paying your taxes for everybody. It's like Christmas came early. So I think that's a very forward-thinking initiative by town council to do. I don't know how many other small communities have done that. We're in a very fortunate position that we can handle that cash flow for the 2 months where it would normally be in our coffers. It's built right into this bylaw, so it'll only be for the 2020 year. Next year, if we need to make those kind of decisions, we'll make them again. And the second thing is that with the deferral of the penalty date, so if you haven't paid them by August 31st, the penalty gets applied on September 1st, 2020. Normally, our penalties are 11% July 1st and 11% January 1st. I have proposed in this mill rate, and it's a good thing Councillor Orr brought this to my attention because I was just apparently going to try and slide it through, that I was thinking that I know council wants to take some initiative to try to help people in these times of, job losses and uncertainty. And so I've proposed that the 11% penalty for September 1st would be 5% instead of 11%. And of course, that's up for discussion because I just pulled that number out because I thought it was a nice, fair number. The reason that some people were talking that maybe we shouldn't even have a penalty September 1st to be nice and try and help people along. But if we don't have a penalty September 1st, no one's paying their taxes until December 31st. And we really can't carry that $3.565 million for those additional months without a bit of a hardship on the town of Fort McLeod. So I've proposed 5 for the September 1st one. So it's a little bit of a, I don't know, carrot for people to pay their taxes on time and a stick at the same time, but not too big of a stick, I thought. So thank you, Councillor Orr.
So that would mean for sure that the December date for penalties would stay the same as what it was currently. Okay. Any other questions or comments on bylaw 1914?
Ms. Holbeck, if, and I say if because it's difficult to predict that, but if the late payment amounts are similar, what kind of financial implications is it to go from 11% to 5%? I know that's a big assumption that they would be similar, but what kind of spending revenue are we talking about?
So this penalty that would be September 1st now is just on the outstanding taxes. So it's only on the current outstanding taxes. So normally we get about $26,000 at that penalty date. So if that's at 11%, I would say it's 11. We'd probably get 11,000 and not 26. So it's a $15,000 reduction.
And of course, the risk is that there will be more late penalties rather than fewer, so kind of 11,000 and up is what the financial implications would be.
Yeah, that's my estimate. Hopefully, everyone pays their taxes on time.
Well, late penalty, is that a budgeted income?
It is.
We budgeted less.
No, I did not. However, I can find efficiencies within my budgets to cover that.
What? Thank you. I'll fair comments, questions for sure. So, any other comments on the mill rate bylaw? Councilor Edwards?
The whole mill rate thing is not my cup of tea. I don't really understand how it all comes together because numbers aren't my friend. But I do really appreciate at the bottom of your recommendation here, you have in the financial implications that if on $100,000, your taxes for for residential are going to go up by about $9 a year. And that for non-residential, if it's around $200,000, your taxes are going to go down by about $12 a year. That's what speaks to me, and that's what I understand is I understand what value my home has and what that implication of mill rates is to me. So I appreciate that that's in there because people like me don't get what a whole mill thing is and numbers and equations and things. So thank you for putting that in.
You're gonna have to thank CAO Keenan because she said, do it in like $100,000 or some sort of a round number so people can apply it to their house and multiply it by 4 or 2 or whatever. So she had the good brainwaves there.
Very good. Motion is on the floor for first reading. CAO Keenan?
Just wanted to take this opportunity, if I could, with council's permission. Budget time is always a tough time of year for administration, and I just wanted to recognize the efforts of our Director of Finance as well as our accounting firm Avail. They did a lot of extra additional kinds of things this year to make sure we made it more user-friendly for not only our residents, but for council and the rest of us that don't have a passion for numbers. So I really just wanted to recognize those efforts and thank those people.
Well said, thank you. So if there is no further comments, we will call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, everyone. Carrying on to item 6, 2020 deferral of non-residential education taxes. Director of Finance, Chris Black.
Thank you again, Council. So I'm not sure if anyone's heard about this in the press, but the provincial government has been trying to make businesses have, I don't know, some more certainty with their cash flows over the next few months. So they have legislated that any non-residential properties can defer their education taxes only for a period of 6 months. And the 6 months started in April, so it's April through September. So we had a webinar last week, the week before last. Anyway, they rolled it out and they gave us a webinar. So the town of Fort Macleod is fortunate in that because we have deferred everyone's total property taxes for 2 months. So that means the non-residential people have all of their taxes deferred for 2 months. We fit within that 6-month guideline just as we are now. So we have already met the standard for this deferral. So from a staffing point of view, we wanted to try and help out a little bit more. So for only the non-residential properties, we are putting forward for council's consideration that non-residential properties can defer their education taxes only if they're going to pay it in full till December 31st. So we give them additional 3 months to pay it in full. If they need more help than that and they can't pay it in full by December 31st, we are putting forward that council would approve that they can pay it in 6 equal installments. They would have to sign up. It's like for our tax installment program, and it would be for their education taxes only, and they would have to pay it over from September till February of 2021. So 6 months, and it would be equal installments. So we were thinking that in for a penny, in for a pound, try and help out a little bit more. So this is what administration has brought to council. It won't be too big of it's not a huge hardship on administration. We would just pull out the non-res combined assessment and property tax notices when we run the bills, and we would put a sticker on them saying you are eligible to defer your education taxes. We would put some paperwork with it. The government has paper that you saw, which is their little blurb about what they're doing, and then we would put in color on the back of that with nice pictures and stuff what the town of Fort Macleod's council is doing for them. So we thought we could help out a little bit more than the province is doing. So we just thought it was a thought. You guys can have a conversation and tell me what you think.
Thank you very much. Is anyone prepared to make a motion on this recommendation? Councillor Monteith?
Can I ask a question first? How much is this gonna affect or gonna cost in time to play around with this? Because before you send out diagnosis, people pay, end of story. Now we got deferrals, we got this, we got that. Seems to me we're creating a lot of administration time here.
It's not going to be a ton of administration time. So the program where we offered everybody to defer their ups and their tips payments, we've had one tips person take us up on that, one. So that didn't have a big uptake for the deferral of the ups and the tips for the 3 and the 5 months. So with property tax notices, we have to defer everybody until we've decided we're going to defer everybody until August anyway. And it's just, I mean, there could be a ton of non-residential people who pay it all. If people can pay it, they're going to pay it all. And if people decide they want to be on the program, they can be on the program. It won't be a ton of time.
Okay. Any other comments? Someone wants to make a motion on this? Councillor Ward? Okay. Motion is on the floor to accept as recommended. Debate, discussion, further questions? Councillor Ward?
Again, just your last financial implications, do you have a sense as to what those financial implications are going to be? You say that we'll have to carry the cost for the January, December, so you have some idea as to what that cost will be? I'm sure you do.
So it's a typo. First of all, I'll admit to the typo, because the carrying the cost would be January, February, because that's the 2 months that would be, yeah.
That makes more sense. Right?
Sort of. I guess it's gonna be, it's all gonna be dependent on how many people take us up on the deferral for the non-res. And if they wanna defer, and how many decide that they don't wanna, they can't pay it all in December, and how many wanna just do over the 6 months. There's a lot of variables, and I could estimate, but it would be like probably the province's COVID estimations. It would just be a guess, sorry.
So our quarterly payments to the province would be September, December. I'm just trying to figure it out. Because they're quarterly, so they're not gonna charge us for one of the quarterly payments charges. But we'll have to pay 2 quarters in December.
So normally we pay quarterly to the province for the education taxes. So in March, we paid the full thing because they hadn't figured out this plan yet. In, so it's March, June and September, they're only charging us for the residential portion of our education taxes. They're not charging us for the non-residential. But then the December bill, I gotta catch it all up. So it all has to be paid to the province. The 2 non-res portions that weren't billed to us in June and September, and everything else has to be paid in December.
So any education taxes that are paid in advance of December, we can make some good interest on those.
Yes, and then I guess it's a balance. It's we've collected some non-res education taxes
That we're not paying.
and we haven't had to pay them to the province yet. And then everybody should have paid everything by December. And then those people who are still on the 2-month payment plan for January, February, I think it's gonna be, I don't know, I'm just gonna say it's a wash, but.
So we stand to gain more from this than to lose. I would suggest just buy extra cash.
I don't wanna make this program sound like we're gaining.
But
I'm trying to make it sound,
gaining
I'm
from the
trying
province,
to
not
make it
from
so
the
we're
residents.
helping.
Right.
Yeah.
You begin from the province.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But I hope it's helpful to anyone who needs it, even if there's 1 out of 10 people who take us up on any of this, I figure it's a success.
And how do we ensure that all business owners know about the option?
So, as I was saying, we're gonna pull all the non-residential bills out when we print the bills, and then we'll put a sticker on it, say you're eligible, they'll have an insert. They can call us, we'll put it on Facebook, we'll put it on,
Chamber of Commerce.
yeah, and we'll probably get some residential people who are not happy, but it's the province has built this machine and we're just following.
Well, thank you. Is there any further questions or discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. And item 7, administration and credit, Director of Finance, Ms. Holbeck.
All right, last one. I'll be sick of hearing my voice by the end of this. All right, so this one's for a line of credit. I've been in discussions with our investment advisors, as a lot of municipalities have been in the province with COVID and the ramifications of COVID. And they mentioned to me, because I do an estimate of my cash flows operating in capital, and I have conversations with the investment advisors. Capital is no problem because we save money and put it in reserves specifically for capital projects. We normally don't, well, I guess I could. I have a reserve that's coming to council, and it's called my contingency reserve, and it's for operating cash flows. And we have some unrestricted surplus that's sitting in investments too for that. However, the investment advisors said with line of credit rates so low, they're at like 1.95, as I said in my submission, and we're earning 3% on our bonds that are within our investments, that when I need cash flow, I normally go cash out in investment. I'll go in, we try not to keep a lot of things in cash. We try to keep most of our investments in bonds and things that are giving us a higher rate of return. So when I have cash flow challenges, I'll call the investment advisor and they'll cash part of the bond or some of the bond. And the investment advisor just stated to me, you know, there's an opportunity cost there, Chris. Like you're cashing in a 3% bond and line of credits are only charging you 1.95%. For a temporary cash flow situation, why wouldn't you just have a line of credit? So then I started to think about it because the town's never had a line of credit. It's never had overdraft protection because we've always had cash flow, positive cash flow and money in our investment accounts. So I also thought from a practical perspective, I'm the one who moves money around. I make sure we have money in the bank, I put money into investments, I take money out of investments. So a line of credit, and we would only use it if the rates worked right. So I mean, hopefully if the line of credit rate went up, the investments rate went up, but there could be a timing issue. But from an administrative point of view too, it makes sense to have just a line of credit that seamlessly flows money into the general bank account when I'm not here or when cash flow gets, you know, something unexpected hits. Normally nothing unexpected hits us. I'm usually pretty well on top of it. But sometimes I'm on holidays and other people will have other jobs to do. So I thought it was a good idea. I'd never thought of it before. But in this time with interest rates so low, I think it's something that we should have a discussion about. And I chose the $2 million amount. Seems astronomical that it would be that much. But just in this year, from now until we get our taxes in August, at the end of August, it'll probably be pretty close to, probably we'll be pulling out about 1.5, getting ready for that, the cash to come back in, and then we'll put it into investments, and then I can, you know, wiggle my way through the rest of the year, okay? But I thought it's a tool in our toolbox, and I didn't think it was something that we shouldn't talk about.
It's a brilliant idea and a great tool.
No, how come nobody thought of this yet?
I don't know,
It's a no-brainer.
Historically, though, rates of return have not been higher than interest you paid on loans, which means that you normally wouldn't think of that. What you're getting now on bonds is what you invested before. When it comes due and you gotta reinvest it, it will fall down like the lending rates have fallen down. But if you were gonna look at it and determine whether you're better off to borrow it on a line of credit or to, you know, cash an investment in, then that makes perfect sense. And if they're doing this automatically without you having to sit down and figure it out, then that's even better.
It is. I think it'll work out well, and when our investments start to mature and we have to reinvest them, then we'll look at the rate of return we're getting on our investments again versus what we're paying on the line of credit and make decisions accordingly. So it'll be fluid.
Anyone prepared to make a motion to this end? Councilor Monteith makes a motion. Any further discussion? Call the question on the favor. Any opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's not. Very good, thank you. You're carrying on to number 8, which was pulling the letter from our consent agenda that we received regarding the River Valley Parks. And so it's on the table. Is there anything specifically, Councillor Wilson, whom you would like to highlight?
I expected it was, but I just want to make sure that all this was considered when we decided to do the pathway explanation, or we're going to do the pathway plan.
It was considered. Some of the things that Darcy's outlined in his letter should be maintenance items that we're doing on an annual basis. So I think we may have slipped a little. And in addition to that, we did have a contractor that was doing a lot of work for us previously that we don't have anymore. We have already, if I'm not mistaken, given MPE the green light to go ahead with the trail study. So we're going to talk to our parks foreman. We've got a lot of work we're doing on trails this summer, so we'll make sure some of these items are addressed. We have addressed the signage issue, so we are going to be putting new signage up. There's no question about that. But there's a couple other things we need to sit down with them on and go over the details of. The idea of horses and all-terrain vehicles, using those trails when they've been upgraded and or maintained on a regular basis is not acceptable, but we have to have an alternative for them. So we need to have that discussion, and we have not had it yet.
Super, thank you very much.
Any further discussion points on this? Councillor Roy?
I too was looking to bring this forward to the regular agenda. Just had a question about some clarification. I believe that one of the things we're looking at in this trail study was to how a trail might fit in with future development. And so that may not be something Mr. Donahue is aware of, that there's that connection. The other question that I had was simply how we are going to respond to him. I'm assuming there'll be a letter or a conversation with him so that we can speak to many of the valid issues that he raises.
Because it was coming up to council tonight, thank you, Councillor Orr, I will be following up with Mr. Donahue by phone in the next day or two.
Very good. Any further discussion? Being said, I should have a motion to accept this letter as information for the records. Councillor Dressler makes a motion. If there's no further discussion, then we'll call the question in favor. Any opposed? Motion carried. And I see no administrative reports, no committee reports, so we have an in-camera tonight for one personnel item. And I'd like to request a motion from camera, council to go on camera. Councillor Venamos makes a motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, everyone.